Hello, welcome to the West Tigers podcast, and it's episode number 66. Eddie Otto, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Joel. It's Fridays are a bit different these days. Used to come home and look forward to putting the feet up and watching a couple of games of footy, but hasn't been the case the last few weeks.
No, it hasn't. You were just saying before we came on air, it looks like they're going to be back at training on the 4th of May, so that'll be a big step. That'll make us feel like it's getting closer. And what are we now? Just a little bit over a month from kickoff.
Yeah, all going well. May 28 kickoff, and I saw Volandis on the TV talking about May 4. I saw Damien Cook almost got in a bit of trouble last week because he was on one of the NRL on Fox podcasts and said some of the South guys were going in for some testing, and he pulled himself up halfway because I don't think clubs are allowed to actually get together before that May 4 starting date. But I'm sure behind the scenes they'll be doing their best to get little individual things done.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be, I'm sure, a lot of these. What we're doing, a lot of Zoom meetings. Apparently, Michael Maguire in that interview he did, which I think was over Zoom, he was saying he's having a lot of Zoom conferences with, in particular, the spine. So that's interesting. So you never know. Maybe new things will be learnt, new skills, and I guess it's always or never a bad thing to break things up and do things a bit differently. So hopefully there's some advantage. You'll notice, Eddie, I've got my original West Tigers shirt on, which I bought. I think, from memory, I wore this to the very first game. So I'm doing pretty well because it still fits. Although I've been on a diet, so it's fitting again. Let's put it that way.
Good stuff. Yeah, I saw it says established 1999 there. So, I might have to pull out. I'm sure I've sort of dropped off buying merchandise the last 10 years because there's sort of so much of it. We mentioned last week about the jerseys, but I definitely like a good polo shirt. I've definitely got a few of the old West Tigers polos, but I don't think I've bought a jersey since about since 2003 or 4, I don't think I've bought an actual jersey. So
I've got I think I've got all the early ones. I've got up to about maybe 2006, but I don't think I've bought one for a long time. No, your taste changes. But it's funny, I don't think I've got any other clothing that has lasted 20 years. So this was obviously a pretty good quality shirt. Get 20 years out of the shirt, it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, we're talking about keep it simple, Joel. That's nice and simple, just black with a logo on it.
Exactly. Yeah. Simple but effective. Let's talk about, just quickly, Todd Greenburg has been probably the only real rugby league news. Neither of us have been scratching around. We can't really find anything going on specifically with the West Tigers, but I wasn't too surprised when Todd Greenburg decided he wasn't going to be there any longer.
Oh yeah, that was the $1 pop in betting terms landing, Joel. I think as soon as Peter Volandis came in, I think the writing was on the wall for Todd Greenburg because Peter Volandis is his own man. It's clear he's been running the show for the last 6 or 8 weeks, and probably the coronavirus crisis maybe gave him a bit of a stay of execution, and he did a reasonable job, I think, in the last couple of months, Todd Greenburg. But looking at all the facts and figures and numbers and money wasted and spent, I know it's not all his fault, but he certainly presided as the CEO over the last, 4 or 5 years of it. So no surprise whatsoever. I think he'd run his race.
He had, and he made some funny decisions that we've spoken about before. Things like the Cameron Smith ring for his wife and the testimonial games for Smith and for Jonathan Thurston. And just, he's made some weird decisions and weird things. And I think the game needs a strong leader, but I think the game is a rudimentary, pretty simple sort of game. And you want a leader, I think, there that keeps things simple. I think he was making it too complex and too convoluted. I think you just got to get back to basics with this game.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he did a fairly good job when he was at the Bulldogs, but he's always been known as a very good media operator. He's very good in front of the camera, but in terms of sort of tangible results, money in the bank, increased crowds, better product, you wouldn't say the NRL's in a better place than it was. And whilst no one could have predicted this virus, it certainly laid bare the amount of wastage that's gone on. But I mean, he's borne pretty much the whole brunt of it. Joel, I don't know what you think, but I think, I saw Phil Gould's been extremely critical, but how many millions of dollars have Penrith wasted the last 5 or 6 years on sacking coaches and early releases for Trent Merrin and all that? So I think, clubs aren't entirely out of the blame here.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's been a lot of wastage across the board. Moving forward, Eddie, do you think, this is always the conundrum, if you put a Ken Arthurson in, who's got ties to the club, a lot of the people through the years that have run the game have had ties, or if they haven't had ties, they've been outsiders and they don't really understand the game. What's your feeling for a new CEO, inside or outside of the game?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I saw, Shane Richardson it was rumoured he put his hand up, but he's been a good operator at South, but he's a fairly divisive sort of figure. Shane Richardson, he gets on the front foot, and he was at the NRL a couple of years ago and in some game strategy job, which no one quite understood what he achieved in those 12 months. So, like you said, if you go for someone from inside, like a CEO from the Broncos, Paul White or someone like that, then the Sydney clubs are going to have, they're going to have the shits with that. Whereas if you go from someone from the South CEO, I think has been put forward, then the Queensland clubs will probably, not be happy with that. So it's, I don't know. I think you're looking for the best mix with Peter V'landys, whether Peter V'landys wants to remain really hands-on, or whether he wants just a money man to look after the money figures, or whether he wants someone like a Phil Gould, even though I've just potted him, who knows the game inside out. I think you need a balance, don't you?
You do need a balance, yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be an interesting appointment, whoever it is. Someone like a Peter Sterling would be, I think, I don't think he would do it, but I think he'd be very good at the job.
Well, that depends. I think you're right. Someone like Sterling or Gould, Gould's got his enemies, so maybe not Gould, but those guys sort of know the game inside out for 20 years. And if V'landys, he's done a great job with Racing New South Wales and putting money in the bank and growing their product. So maybe that would be the road they go down. But yeah, it's hard to know. But, the person coming in probably has got nothing to lose, because we've sort of swung and missed, haven't we, with Dave Smith and Todd Greenburg. And I can't remember, was it Dave Gallop before that, or there might have been one more before that?
Well, yeah, David Gallop was there for a long time. David Moffat comes to mind. He was there for a while. But yeah, there hasn't been somebody who's really made the job their own for a long time, like in the old days when it was Ken Arthurson and John Crail pre the Super League. So yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm sure an announcement will be coming through soon. I'll share screens, Eddie, and we'll get on to talking about the West Tigers specifically. Yep. And let's get that one there going there. Okay, you should be able to see that now, Eddie.
Getting there, yep. Can see it now.
Beautiful. So, yeah, there's the list of all the guys that have played on the wing for the West Tigers over, at least for 3, 4, or 5 games. And the thing that stands out to me as I look through that list, Eddie, is something that we talk about still today in 2020, aside obviously from some obvious exemptions there, an overall lack of speed.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because there's a few guys on the list that had speed but played very little games. And whether that's because their football skills weren't quite as good as their stopping the clock in terms of their 40-metre sprints or whatever, or whether it was other factors. But yeah, there's a few guys there that I'd totally forgotten about that played probably less than 10 or 20 games. But a bit like the fullbacks, Joel, there's probably 2 or 3 standouts there overall.
There is. Let's start from the top. We started off with John Carlaw and John Hopewadi in the year 2000. And I thought John Carlaw gave us some pretty good value. Hopewadi, he did play some good games, but certainly they were the Wild West days of the original West Tigers, and John Hopewadi represents all of that, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. John Hopewadi was a really good winger at his best. We probably didn't get him at his best. He had a few good games in 2000. And John Carlaw was a pretty good, serviceable player, wasn't he? He spent a bit of time in the centres. He was a big enough guy. Remember, he had one really big game, Joel. I think it might have been against the Northern Eagles at Leichhardt. I think he might have scored a hat trick that day. It was about midway through 2000, I think.
Yeah. Pretty handy player. He was one of. See, I mentioned this before, probably 6 months or so ago. But when we were talking about the early days of West Tigers, the thing that started to make me feel like we were going to be a good club was that some of the guys that came to us and some of the guys that had left us that went on to bigger things played in grand finals around that period. Where if you look at if you look at both sides of the joint venture, Balmain and West through the 1990s, essentially none of the players, or maybe only a very small handful of the players, really excelled, won premierships at another club or moved on and won premierships at another club. Whereas we started in those early days, we started to have premiership winners in the mix in the club. And some of the guys that we lost went on to play in grand finals, like John Carlaw, He played for the Warriors in the grand final and that type of thing. So that was a bit of a change that I noticed.
Yeah, it's funny when you think back. I vaguely remember now. John Carlo was his grand final 2002 at the Warriors, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember we recruited Paul Fatawira played for 2000 when he played in the grand final. But yeah, I mean that's the key for any club is if you can recruit a premiership winner or if you can. It's been happening the wrong way around lately, Joel. We've been giving away premiership winners for other clubs. Hard to talk about that.
Laloa Milford, I remember Laloa Milford and his brother Asa Milford playing for Balmain. Laloa didn't play too many games for West Tigers, but the one game that does stand out for me is the game in Canberra in the snow. Were you at that game, Eddie? I was.
Really? No, I wasn't at that game. I was watching on TV, and it was nothing. I haven't seen anything like it since. What was it like being there that day?
Well, it was cold, but it was cold on the way down. So we got to Goulburn, and it started to sleet. And I started, okay, maybe it could be a snowy day in Canberra. And when we arrived at the ground, which was probably just after lunch, it was snowing. It was literally coming down and gathering on the ground. It died off a little bit, I think, just before the game. But it was unbelievable, and it was unbelievably cold. Sitting in Leichhardt Oval on a Friday night can be pretty cold, as you know. But that was, you couldn't have too many layers on it. It was unbelievably cold.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of games in Canberra that the Tigers played. One in 2004 when it was, I think, 1 degree maybe. That was the coldest game I've been to. But that was a classic game. Even though we were on the wrong end, I think Craig Field got a charge down kick with a few minutes to go for Canberra to win. Yeah.
It was. We were a bit robbed that day. We were probably the better team, but didn't win it. Anyway, moving on. Hassan Saylor. I remember Hassan playing a fair few games for the West Tigers, and he was pretty sort of tall kind of winger, but I don't remember him being very fast.
I think that's an understatement. Yeah, he wasn't fast.
No,
he was one of the slowest wingers I can remember, but he was a popular guy. I think he was well connected. I think he might have owned a few nightclubs and stuff around Sydney, around King's Cross at the time, and he came over. I think he might have been a Terry Lamb signing, and he reminded me a little bit of a poorer version of Bo Ryan, where he's pretty wholehearted and wouldn't make many mistakes, but he really lacked pace.
He did. Makasoni Richter. Now, wasn't Makasoni Richter known with a different name? Kafusi.
Okay. Yeah, I remember, Joel, I was at his debut where he was known as Jackson Kafusi.
Jackson Kafusi, yep.
And he scored a hat-trick on debut, which had a remarkable game. And we turned up next year and he was Lupina Kafusi.
Yep.
And a couple of years later, he turned up at Canterbury and he was Makasoni Richter. And the Canterbury fans actually didn't know it was Jackson Kafusi, if you know what I mean. They thought it was a totally new player.
Yeah, I think that is he the player that didn't play? He pulled out of the game because of a header.
Headache. Yeah. That was on the audio. He had a hat, but he had his. He was super fast.
Yep.
He was extremely raw. I remember him going up to take bombs, 30 metres out like an AFL catching style, which is pretty fraught. Occasionally it would come off. But yeah, he was very, very raw, but he had his moments. He was a handful when he was on his game.
I don't have any real memories of Ahmad Bajuri, but I think he went on to play for Souths, I think, from memory.
Yeah, he had a strong start in 2002. I think he played the first 7 or 8 games, might have scored 4 or 5 tries.
Yep.
And then he copped a bad injury and never really heard of again. So don't know quite what happened there, but I think he went on to play for Souths. I think you're right.
The next guy is a grand final winner, Daniel Fitzhenry, and we've spoken about Daniel before on the podcast. Made a huge contribution to the club, but still a very divisive character.
Oh, was he? Well, I was actually at his debut as well, Joel, where we lost a game in the last 30 seconds to Penrith at Leichhardt Oval.
Yep.
I remember the story back then. I think he was still working at the airport or something, Fitzhenry, and he was
Baggy Chandler. Yeah,
Baggy Chandler at the airport, and look, he was divisive, and I used to get on the West Tigers forum after some games and want to kill him, basically, some of his displays. But look at his stats: 119 games, 43 tries, premiership winner. Came back in 2010, played in the preliminary final. So, arguably, he's our most decorated winger. Even though the fact I didn't love some of his game, he did pull it together though at the back end of 2005 and play well.
The irony is, if we continue with this trend, Eddie, and we go through centres and we get to 5'8", Fitzy might get another run when we're talking about the West Tigers 5'8s through history as well.
Yeah, well, I mean that was one of the things Tim Sheen saw in him was his versatility. I never really liked him in any other position other than wing because I thought he was a good finisher and he was a good runner out of dummy half. He was quite nimble those first 15 or 20 metres. But, geez, those kick returns, he used to be one of the most timid ball runners I've ever seen. He sort of used to go – they used to call him Donuts, Fitzhenry, because he used to sort of go around in circles and not make any metres. But, look, like I said, very popular member of the side, consistent. And he scored that match-winning try in the grand final. That was him in the corner where I think Scott Prince set him up for that try. So, he'll go down as, not one of the all-time greats of the club, but a premiership winner and over 100 games.
Yeah, and he was on the finishing end of that amazing try that Benji set up at Shark Park where he stepped and got it to Pat Richards and then back to Fitzhenry. I think that was how it worked out. But, yeah, that was an amazing moment in West Tigers history. Robbie Miles, I don't remember, Robert having any real standout sort of games, but I know he made a contribution to the Sevens win. Was there for that?
Yeah, I think Robert Miles' best days were at Manly. I remember him being at a game against St George. I was at the game against St George at Homebush where he did his knee and stayed on the field for another 5 minutes, hobbling around. And St George scored a try out there. He didn't know what he'd done, but he'd done his cruciate and was out for the season. So, I don't think he had much success after that.
This was one of the signings that I was really enthusiastic about. I was always a fan of Robbie Beckett. I thought he was really fast, a really, really good player for Penrith. Came to West Tigers and only played, I think, 7 or 8 games and wasn't the player who I thought we were going to get. It was disappointing.
No, Robbie Beckett, he was a flyer for Penrith. And, again, I don't know exactly how old he is when he signed for us, but maybe he was just on the downward slide. Again, I seem to remember an injury that he got. I think he was at the club around 2003, so there wasn't much talent around back then, but definitely didn't see the best of him, Tigers.
Luke Cavell, what an interesting career Luke had. I remember watching him playing for the Magpies, and he was a good goal kicker. He had that very strange sort of cross himself before he kicked the goals. I don't know if you remember that. He'd go sort of whatever he did, he had a little routine going, but he kicked them from everywhere. But when we're talking about a lack of pace, Luke is probably one of the first players that come to mind. But, gee, he did well. I think he even went on to captain Cronulla at one point. So he had a very fascinating career.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that got absolutely everything out of their ability. I mean, I remember there was a push for the Tigers to sort of get him into first grade from a lot of fans purely because of the frustration of our goal kicking. And I think he was an even better goal kicker when he played sort of 20s and reserve grade. He was around 90%.
Yeah.
He went to be a pretty good first grade goal kicker as well, and a good winger. Very slow, Luke Cavell, but when he went to the Sharks, he managed to not only hold his spot, but I think you're right. I think he might have captained a few times, and he was safe, and he was good under the high ball, and that's the sort of winger, Joel, you can carry is probably the wrong word, but if you've got a winger that kicks goals at 80, 85%, as long as they're safe, that's not a bad slot to have in your team.
Yeah, exactly. We could have one now. It'd be pretty nice. Jason Moodie had a couple of stints with the club. Of course, probably played his best football for Parramatta and Newcastle. But the overarching memory of Jason Moodie that I've got is him smoking behind the grandstands at Leichhardt before a game, and that's a true story.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. And it'd be interesting to know if there are many heavy smokers still in the NRL. Probably a few social ones. Probably couldn't get away with it now. But he played well in 2004 when Tim Sheens brought him across, and he scored a fair few tries that year. And he played Origin, Jason Moodie, when he was at the Knights. I think he played for Parramatta as well.
Yep.
But bringing him back in 2007 was a bizarre sort of move. I don't know what happened there, but he was well past it by then.
Yeah. As you can see from the comments from our followers on Facebook, a lot of mentions of this next man, Pat Richards. He stays a very big part in West Tigers fans' hearts, and you'd have to have him as one of our number 2 wingers. And I mean, he was a fantastic contributor to the club, but when you look at it, Eddie, he didn't play a whole lot of games. Like, he got injured in 2004. I think he got injured in the trial up at Gosford after coming over from the Eels. Didn't play a lot in 2004. Of course, we all know what happened in 2005, and then spent years and years and years over in the UK before coming back for a couple of seasons.
I
think he played longer, given how strongly admired he is.
Yeah, I totally agree. 82 games for West Tigers, yet, like you said, he's one of the most well-known West Tigers outside of Tigers fans. But, yeah, the sad thing is, I guess, Joel, is he spent, I think, 9 years in the UK for us, and he played 244 games. I think he might have won the Man of Steel 2 or 3 times as Player of the Year, Super League. And by the time he left us in 2005, he wasn't yet our goal kicker. And when he came back, he was an 85% goal kicker. So, you know, we missed out on the best 9 years of his career, but we did get to see, how good he could be in 2005 with his some of the line breaks he used to make on the end of those set plays, and his kickoffs. Who can forget his kickoffs? That sort of changed the game a little bit with those short, towering kickoffs. And when he came back, he was probably 33 or 34, and he was still decent, decent NRL player, but. Yeah, we missed that 9-year chunk. What could have been with someone like Pat Richards? He could have played 250 games for the club.
Matthew Reek came over from the Sharks, a little bit like the Robbie Beckett signing. 2 guys that had lots of speed, but just never got it together really at West Tigers.
No, never got it together. I remember him playing one game at Leichhardt when I think Sheens finally might have dropped Fitzhenry, and he had a bit of a shocker and never seen again.
Yeah, Michael Crockett, I think. Crockett came from the Roosters from memory, played a few games. He doesn't stand out to me. I can't really remember it.
Yeah, well, this was one of the guys that I think had electric pace. Don't know if he played more than a handful of games, and might have played in 2006 for us, but he came over with more raps on his pace than his actual game, but couldn't lock down a spot.
Yeah. In the same boat as Pat Richards, plenty of love from the fans for this next man, Taniela Tuiaki, one of the guys that, when you look at West Tigers history, the Jared McCracken, Simon Dwyer, Taniela, these career-ending injuries that had a devastating effect on the club. It really, he was such a marketable, likeable, and effective player. It was such a great shame to lose him.
Yeah, he was huge. I mean, he was our Semi Radradra. I mean, that's how good he was in 2008, 2009. In 2009, I think he wrote down here, he led the NRL in line breaks and tackle busts. So, for a winger, he did both things. He could finish, but inside your own, 20, he was an absolute handful to tackle. No one wanted to tackle him, and he came from pretty humble backgrounds. No one really heard of him. I think he came across from rugby union, Joel, and it wasn't like he was a youngster who came through the ranks or anything like that. So that was a great story. It was just a real tragic end, the way he broke his ankle that night and wasn't able to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. We've spoken about Beau Ryan before on the podcast. He was, as you said earlier, he was a wholehearted player, and it was a shame that he went over to the Sharks, but he's gone on to have a bit of a career in the media. He's a bit of an entertainer, isn't he? He's not too bad, though.
Yeah, on his media stuff, I enjoyed his first year or two, and then I sort of found it a little bit boring after that, because it's sort of, I don't know, I thought he was repeating the same sort of stuff, but I don't know. I think, like you said, he's what, from a reserve grader who came through as a fringe first grader, and now I think he works maybe breakfast radio and stuff. So he's forged a career out of what he did there. So really good on him. But he was a bit more than just a winger. I think he was a heart and soul sort of player, a bit like sort of Chris Hyington. And when both those guys left, I think at the end of 2012, the wheels really sort of come up. The soul of the club sort of to come away, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we got the likes of Adam Blair and Braithen Astor as replacements, which, as we all know, didn't work out quite as was expected. I think I heard somebody talking about Adam Blair. We were paying him $350,000 a year, or $1,000 a metre.
Yeah, I don't know. Poor old Adam Blair. I think he was a fish out of water. I don't know. I think, I mean, it was a dud signing, but whether it was the way we used him or the way we played a sort of sideways game back then. But, definitely didn't work out.
Penny Tungave. Now, I don't remember a whole lot about Penny, but I think from memory he was Fijian, which would make him the first Fijian West Tigers player. Am I right?
Yeah. The name sort of just raised an alarm. I couldn't quite pencil him in. I think he might have played some 20s for us and done all right in the 20s. But yeah, I can't remember him actually playing first grade. He obviously did, but I actually don't know what happened with Penny Tungave. But I certainly, when I saw the name, I remembered it. But it sort of escapes me his first grade games. I'm sure he played 20s for us. So.
Reece Hanbury's probably in the same basket. Yeah, it doesn't really. I don't have any recollection.
No memories of first grade. Yeah,
you'll have memories of this guy, Lote Tuqiri, and boy, that was. If you remember the forum in those days, he just melted the forum, the discussion on Lote Tuqiri, because the signing of him seemed to take forever.
Yeah, I think it broke the record in the amount of pages or whatever. But it was just the right signing at the right time. We'd had 4 years outside finals. We wanted, a marquee player, not just a ability-wise, but someone who'd bring that, brand, maybe money in that. Lottie, he was a superstar in rugby union, not just an average player. Played for Australia and played Origin. And again, I saw the other day, Joel, that 2010 game against Canberra in the finals was on. The try he scored, he was flying down the wing, and that was Lottie at his best.
Yep.
But then he was just cruelled by injuries the next 3 years. So I don't think the club could be blamed for that. I thought it was a great signing. I thought he would have been great for us. In the end, we probably only got one really good year out of him. But he fitted in really well. There was no real ego to Lote Tuqiri, which I thought there might be. But I think he lived in the Balmain area, and I thought he really did his best for us. It just didn't totally work out after that first year or two.
Yeah, exactly. We spoke about Mitch Brown when talking about fullbacks, West Tigers fullbacks last week on episode 65. So we've probably no great need to talk about Mitch Brown other than just rehashing what we were saying, that he was a good wholehearted player. And I think he should have stayed at one club. I think he could have been a better player. This next player is someone who divides opinion and divided opinion. But I've got to say, probably not in today's game, but through the years, I've always had a little space in my heart for nuggety little wingers like Matt Utai and Graham Lyons and Gary Edwards. They have a way of sort of ducking under the defence and scoring tries. And I liked Matt Utai. I thought he was a good player, aside from the odd bizarre incident.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really good player. Probably Canterbury best year of his career, but even at West Tigers, I think it was 2011, he might have played in the final series, and it was I was a bit doubtful when he came across. I thought it was a bit of a reach because I think he'd been playing reserve grade at the Bulldogs for the previous 12 months. But like you said, he was fearless. He would run at you 100 mile an hour, and you got to respect that. Remind me of sort of a bigger version of, chunkier version of Corey Thompson. Just very courageous player.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I remember him playing in the finals. I think he played in the centres for us.
He did. He had to mark up Mark Gasnier, which could have been a bit of a disaster, but we actually won that first final in 2011 against the Dragons.
He did really well. Yeah. Tim Simona. Look, Tim was I was never a massive fan of Tim Simona. I think you might have been a bigger fan than I was.
Yeah, well, once we got all the background on what had been going on, it's probably explained why he was so inconsistent. I think he could have been a really, really good player, but his head was probably not quite there. But yeah, he had moments in games where he's great and moments where he just go missing for 20 minutes. So player would probably always be a bit of a question mark over.
Yeah. Joel Reddy was a decent player, made a bit of a contribution. Any particular memories of Joel Reddy while he was playing for the West Tigers?
I think
games, but,
I think he no disrespect, he good first grade career, but fits into that category of sort of a bit of a journeyman, maybe slightly over the hill when we sign him.
Yep. This player certainly wasn't. He set the under-20s alight, finally made his debut, scored 4 tries on debut at Campbelltown, and was destined for bigger and better things, and that's what he did. He went to Melbourne and he went to rugby union. He's probably made $1 billion, but the heart breaks a little bit when you think about how good it would have been to have Marika Koroibete on the wing for a longer period of time for the Tigers.
Oh yeah, I mean, not only a Storm, but he's gone on to be one of the best players in Australian rugby, and I just didn't understand at the time what we were doing. Like his talent was there. You could see it watching reserve grade on it. I can't quite remember back in 2014 and 13 whether he had a couple of injuries or issues, but the guys ahead of him certainly were not better than him. And Craig Bellamy's not a mug. Melbourne Storm, they recognise sort of talent they could work with, and
the
only question mark is you don't quite know if they're going to end up as good as they were like Addo Carr in Melbourne as they would have here. But yeah, he was a gun winger at Melbourne.
That was a free gift for the Melbourne Storm, and they didn't think twice about it when he came up, and the option of signing, availability of signing him. Why you wouldn't hang on to a Marika Koroibete? Because they're the kind of guys that win your games. They're also the kind of guys that people come to watch. That was another dumb decision in West Tigers history, letting him go.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what exactly happened, whether he was I think he might have just been stuck in reserve grade and sort of Melbourne snuck under our guard. But yeah, he had everything. He was like a faster version of Taniela Tuaqiri. He used to run like a Mack truck, and he improved his defensive side, and good luck to him. Well, I'm happy for him, even though it wasn't in Tigers colour.
David Nofaluma still with us, and making a lot of fans really like David Nofaluma. At times I really like David Nofaluma. At other times I'm wondering why we persist. And I hate to say that about somebody who has played as many games for us. He's wholehearted. He's got some skill, but he's got those errors in his game, and defensively a little shaky.
Yeah, I think you said it all there. I think he's wholehearted, a bit like a Bo Ryan, bit of a heart and soul type player, but just a few errors in his game that sort of frustrate the fans. And, maybe in a really strong side, he'd be that sort of 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 winger. But in the side we've got at the moment, he's done well to hang on, and he's probably up over 100 games for us now, Joel. I don't know how many of these wingers played over 100. I know Fitzhenry did, but Nofaluma would have to be there, I'm sure. Yeah,
he'd be there or thereabouts. Yeah, there's a lot of guys here that played somewhere between 6 and 20 games, and a lot of turnover of wingers. Keith Lulia, probably everybody would share the same thing as me, the same memory, and that was the game against Canterbury where he scored 4 tries. And that's it for Keith, really, isn't it?
That certainly came out of the blue that day. I was out at that game at ANZ, and it didn't exactly have to do a huge amount to get over the line. There was some good inside movement going on. I think that might have been Mitchell Moses' first grade game, and he had a blinder that day. And Keith Lulia, he did okay at times in 2014, but it wasn't much after that.
Yeah. Jordan Rankin. Now, Jordan came to us from the Gold Coast, and he was pretty pacey sort of winger, and he has gone over to the UK Super League. But Jordan always now remembered for keeping Josh Addo Carr out of first grade.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably unfair, isn't it? He doesn't pick the team, and he was an okay winger, and he used to kick goals. Not a great goal kicker, but looked like an okay option at the start of 2015, I think, and that was sort of just before Josh Addo Carr had sort of started to raise people's eyebrows in reserve grade. But yeah, there was just a time there in 2016 where Addo Carr had debuted and Rankin was back taking his place, and it was just like, Jason Taylor, come on, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, I think that's what hurts about the Marika Koroibete thing, is that we didn't just do it once, we did it twice. You could see from Josh Addo Carr what he'd done at Cronulla in the lower grades, what he did when he got into first grade. And we just gifted Melbourne another star winger.
Yeah, it's criminal, really. Yeah. It's just I remember the game he had against Brisbane. I don't know. I think we might have won it by a field goal up at Suncorp. Would have been only his second or third game, and every time he touched the ball, you felt like something was going to happen. And I just don't know what it was with Jason Taylor, whether it was an ego thing or whether there was something going on with Addo Carr. But it was just, at the time, I remember thinking this is just criminal giving away this player. And sure enough, Melbourne turned him into an Origin player within 12 months.
Yeah. Oh dear. Malachi Watene-Zelezniak. Look, Wholehearted comes to mind. I remember when we signed him, my father said to me, so we've got a Watene-Zelezniak. And I said, yeah, we got the older, slower version.
Yeah. No, I thought again, he's a good wholehearted player. Certainly gave his all when he was there, and actually ended up back at Penrith, didn't he?
Yeah, still there. Yeah.
Yeah, but Dallin, it's a shame we didn't get Dallin last year because he's kicked into gear at Canterbury. He sort of hit a flat spot at Penrith, but he's been playing well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get down to the men of the minute, Corey Thompson, who is, well, as of earlier in the year, was out the West Tigers fullback, but I still think he's a winger. And wholehearted is the word that comes to mind. He never does anything out there on the field that isn't completely to the best of his ability, although he does have the odd error.
No, I mean, that was one of the ones that Ivan got right. He got a really good underrated player for a bargain basement price. And he hasn't let us down really at all the last couple of years. And it'd be interesting to see how long he can, keep going on the wing, because I'm sure eventually, Joel, we'll get some young sort of player come through that might have a bit more speed and natural talent, but Corey won't be giving his spot up for anyone without a fight.
No, and then we can let that player go to Melbourne. And then there's Robert Jennings.
Yeah, well, Robert Jennings hasn't done a lot yet, Joel, but I know he's I think he's your favourite player. You want him to do well, so I hope he does.
He's warming up. He's going to get better.
Joel, he hasn't done anything wrong the last 4 weeks.
That's true. Exactly. Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, there you go. So who are your two, let's name a couple of favourites. Let's name a couple of sentimental favourites as well. What
I had a top five, really. And I had Tuiaki just slightly ahead of Pat Richards, because I actually think just in terms of his actual production, I know Pat obviously won the grand final, so we're going to remember Pat more fondly, but I thought Tuiaki was brilliant when he played. Pat Richards, they were the clear top two. I had Lote at 3. Then I had to have Fitzy at 4, Fitzhenry, and then, 5 would have been Corabetti or Addo Carr, but we just didn't get to see much of them.
Yeah.
You?
Pretty much the same. I'd have a Matt Utai at number 5. The two Melbourne gifts, Addo Carr and Corabetti, 3 and 4. Tuiaki, and it's hard to go past Pat Richards, given the goal kicking. He just made it interesting too. So I'm like most of the other West Tigers fans, just love the guy. Good for us.
Yeah, and the famous grand final try. I was on that side of the field where most of it's Benji Marshall the flick, but I think he palmed off Rod Jensen about 17 times on the way to the try line there. Great.
Yeah. It's a very memorable moments. Let's hope we have more of those types of moments.
Yeah, we need them.
All right, Eddie. Well, we'll come back next week. There may be some West Tigers news specifically. We may have signed Quade Cooper and Sonny Bill Williams, but don't hold your breath.
No. Anyway, they might be back at training in a week, so we might have to send a spy down to Concord Oval or something, Joel.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about centres next time.
Yeah, well, there's probably a couple that spring to mind, but yeah, I'm sure you got a list of 20 or 30 there that ready to fire.
Exactly. All right, Eddie, take care.
Thanks, Joel. See ya.